I'm back in the happiest place on earth. I hope you can feel my smile. Hopefully you can hear it, or if you're watching right now, you can see it. But my smile is so big because every time I get a chance to spend time with this young man who you get to experience, who's been on the podcast, I believe, more than anybody else. The reason why is because not only is he a master at his craft, he's one of the most incredible human beings. And knowing him from the beginning, knowing him before all of the accolades, all those things. And the cool thing is that he's an amplified version of what I knew at that point. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people switch their persona up. They become this, larger than life being, and then you can't relate to him anymore. And it's amazing because I've known this young man all the way through every single step of the way. And I've got a chance to be able to watch him when he didn't know that I was watching. And what I mean by that is, like, integrity for me is that you do the same thing in the dark as you do in the light. And I've watched Patric, grow and grow and grow and be, I think, one of the most iconic people in his industry, if not in any industry. And to be able to see it, the connection point that he has to people, the heart that he has, and the experience that he just created for my son the other day. I called him and I said, man, we're going to go to a Raider game, which hurt my heart in the first place, going to a Raider game. But then it was the Raiders and Chiefs, and that hurt my heart too because I'm a Titans fan. You guys all know that. But my son wanted to see Patrick Mahomes. We went. We got a chance to be on the field. We had phenomenal seats. And Patrick set us up to be able to go to one of his restaurants, Strip Steak at the Mandalay Bay. And it was unreal. I asked my son at the end of the time, you're on the field, you get to see Patrick Mahomes, the greatest quarterback of all time. You're right up close to him. Yeah, you get these amazing seats. You have this phenomenal day. You fly out in the morning and then fly back. What's your favorite part of the whole day? And he looked at me and he was like, Dad, that steak. And it wasn't only the steak, it was the experience. And what I learned was my pops taught me this very early on, that it was never the steak, it was always the sizzle. And what Patric's been able to do in the culinary industry is not only have the greatest sizzle in the world, but he backs it up with the greatest steak. And I tell you, it's incredible to be able to have him on the podcast. But more than that for me is to have a friend in him that I constantly am inspired. And I told him this. I said, I don't want to look at your Instagram anymore because it makes me feel bad about my vacations. So I can't wait to share with you Mr. Patric Yumul, the CEO of Table One, that is changing the culinary industry and taking it to that next level. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Welcome to the show, Patric. Thank you so much for being on, man. I hope you have a smile on your face because every time that my family thinks about you, we have a smile on ours.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to see you and great to connect again.
Tell me, man, how is it that you continue? Like, there's people who get to a level, right? And then they rest on that. And I've never seen you rest. Not to say that, like you run at a frantic pace. You're very zen, peaceful, all the stuff. But there's never been a time that I've seen you that you weren't better than the time before. How can you continue to get better as you go?
Well, I mean, thank you for the compliment, first of all. That's certainly the goal, is to continually improve on a daily basis. And I think, one of the core keys to my modus operandi is that term Kaizen, which is the Japanese term for continual improvement, and just every single day find a way to be better at something, whether it's a better father, a better brother, a better son, a better husband, a better leader, better at working out, better at eating, and I think if you I've been listening to your podcasts and inch stones, and it's just about that. It's about those small little gains every day. You know, After a while, the compound interest that you receive from those small little gains is huge. And so that's really just the kind of mode that I operate in. And I think that just like a muscle, you can't get to where you want it to be, and then all of a sudden it just stays. You have that beach body forever. No, you have to continue to work out, and if you stop working out, that's when atrophy sets in. And so that's my same philosophy with trying to grow as both in character and in capacity, is constantly pushing, constantly growing, constantly evolving and learning, and hopefully over time, huge gains happen.
Well, I've seen this. I watch it with you because some people have theories and you're like, oh, cool, that's great. But I've actually seen this play out, and I saw this play out. I remember when you were talking about Table One, when you were telling me about it, and that's the way that you were going, and the concept and things like that as you were starting to move through. What about, do you ever get weary? Like, is it ever, and when you do, when a person gets weary in that constant improvement, how do you recharge it, or how do you help the person to step back into it and remember that we're on this path?
I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't get weary, if I didn't get, if I said I didn't get anxious or nervous or any of those things. I think all of those feelings are very present in everybody's lives, and it's especially my own. I think for me, my battery pack that I use to charge is friends and family, and getting to spend time with those that I love is always something that helps me kind of refill and re-energize. I think spending time in in prayer and in grace, and finding gratitude is also a way for me to continually recharge and avoid the weariness. But I mean, I think getting weary is always something that's natural. It's just a matter of pushing through it. And it's funny when I remember when Maggie, my wife, when we had our first child, going through, I think they were called Murphy classes, or the Murphy method or whatever. But one of the, it's kind of the new Lamaze or at least it was for us, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. But one of the things that they said was the only way out is through, right? And, the only way, out of the pain that you're in during labor is you just got to get through it. And it's something that always stuck with me, and I've always thought about that. And it's, whenever I'm in, there's times of trouble or there's adversity or whatever it is, I always think, the only way out is through. And there's another kind of parable that I've recently came across too, which I've started using with our kids, is talking about the cow or the buffalo. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but when like a cyclone or a tornado comes, cows will run away from it, right? And what inevitably happens is that cyclone or tornado catches up and swallows up the cow, and then hamburgers, for dinner. But the buffalo, when they see the storm brewing and they see the cyclone coming, they run headfirst into it, and because of that, they get through it, and they don't get sucked up, and they avoid the catastrophe. And so that's another thing, is being the buffalo, not the cow. And when you've got times of that are challenging, times that are tough, you've really just gotta go head first and run into it.
I lost my mic for a second. I want to talk about Maggie, because Maggie is unbelievable. Like, getting to spend time. We got to come over to the house. I came with James Dixon, who makes everybody laugh. First of all, sometimes he'll say some stuff that makes people feel uncomfortable, because he'll joke about things that you don't think that he's going to joke about. But we got a chance to be able to come to the house. I was around Maggie. It was awesome. I mean, the way that she is with the kids, all those things. it's kind of fitting too, because it's the 31st of the month, and the Proverb 31 is all about the woman in your home. And I want to list off some stuff that I learned, but I wanted to kind of get your thought on it. It talks about in Proverbs 31 to compliment a woman in this order. On her confidence, her value, her hard work, her perseverance, her intelligence, her ingenuity, her wisdom, her prudence, her honor. And then once you do that, then compliment her on her beauty. And I was like, it hit me because having a daughter, if I only compliment my daughter on her beauty and make sure that is, she's always going to constantly think that she has to look a certain way. But it was telling me this part of it. Do you have any thoughts on that, or?
I mean, that's pretty powerful. I wrote that down. I'm gonna look into that later, deeper. But yeah, I mean, listen, I have two little ones. One's 10, one's 8, and I think, the one, my wife is amazing, and she's certainly, my kite string, and that keeps me, grounded, and it really is, like I said, a place that I go to get comfort and to get recharged, and she's amazing at that for me. But I think in terms of, the way that we like to nurture, compliment, fuse over with our girls is always about the effort, always about their confidence, always about their heart, their demeanor, their character. Obviously I think they're gorgeous and beautiful, and we always want to love on them and tell them, how amazing they always look. But really it's trying to establish those kind of key character points that they can then now go back to, because what as they grow older, or as they do have times of challenge, that they can remember, yeah, I am good, I am strong, I am smart, I am confident, I do have a great heart, I am a caring person, and that's really, kind of the strength that we want them to have inside. And then, yeah, if they're funny and beautiful and charming, those are all just kind of icing on the cake.
So how does this pertain? Because I've noticed that you're one of the first people that you're not overtly, like, you're not some pastor or a person that is like, you need to believe what I believe, but everybody in your organization knows that you're constantly moving from a wisdom space as opposed to a circumstantial. And what I mean by that is that you're not just looking at, let's just solve the challenge of the circumstance. You're looking at the root of the challenge and how to be able to set people up to be able to win. When you have people come from all different walks of life, like you do with Table One, how do you then convey that message when all of them have so much difference, but you seem to bring people together like I've never seen it before? Take us behind the curtain and how that art is, how you're able to do it.
I think that so to unpack that a little bit, there's a couple of different tools that, you can call them tools, or you can, there's devices, or just, are just kind of belief systems. But one is what, in the work environment, everybody's got to be they've all got to be connected to each other and feel like they're connected and feel like they're all coming from a common perspective. And so when we train and when we develop people, we really do, I want to say we do an amazing job of creating that central system that everybody feels connected to. And it starts with, one, as we come together, everybody's here for a purpose, whether it's to make more money, to be part of something special, if they want, to learn a new skill. But eventually, those are kind of the self-serving interests that they have. But eventually, those interests now become part of a collective desire, and and we foster that and establish that very early on, and then continue to build on that brick by brick. And earlier, before we started recording, we were talking about 49ers and creating fans, and obviously you went to the Chiefs Raiders game. Um, but you said, did you make your kids be 49ers fans? And what we did was we created a lot of fun around the 49ers. So we went to the
Mm.
games on Sundays, and we created a lot of cognitive association, with the team. And whether it was, okay, we got, take the kids, to the game, get them pictures with the cheerleaders, get them to meet some of the players, tell them some of the stories. And as we're kind of helping to build good memories, we're also, secretly building fans. Um, and we did that with the San Francisco Giants as well. We went, but it's, but it's like that and it's like that with faith, right? And if you build, and also with, fitness, if you build fond memories around that, and they're going to then be at a place soon in their lives where they're making their own decisions. And a lot of times, children will rebel off the decisions that the parents, put down upon them. And I'm a firm believer in, rules without relationship leads to rebellion. And so I want them to have a relationship with, with me. I want them to have a relationship with the 49ers, with God, with fitness, whatever it is. So they've got that great cognitive association. So then when they're out in the wilderness by themselves, they know they're going to naturally draw back upon that. And it's the same in building teams within the restaurants, right? And so we want to establish a relationship. We want to be, myself and our leadership team, we always want to, one, be examples for what we're talking about and what we expect, but also examples for life. And we want to make sure that the message we're delivering is consistent with who we are as character, as human beings, and what we have as character within us. And that has to be put together in a package where now the team that's following us has to want that, right? And they want to be a part of that, and they want to be associated with it. And there's some stuff that's intense, and there's some stuff that's fun, and there's a whole lot of in between. But eventually, what that does is it builds very strong culture, and it builds, it ultimately builds for those team members to become custodians of the legacy, right? Just like with your kids, they're now custodians of that legacy. There's a great, I think it's a Christmas commercial where there's this dad that's singing to his son this song from the 70s or 80s, and he's always singing it to the baby, and he's singing it to the baby, and he's singing it to him when he's 5, and he's singing it to him when he's 8, and the dad's always acting silly. And when he's, by the time he's 12, the kid's like, leave me alone, you're embarrassing me. And 15 and 18, and the dad would call him and sing him the song and dance around. And then they fast forward to when that son has his own kid, and he calls up, I get emotional. He calls up his dad and has the baby, and he sings to his dad that song. But it's, it's creating that legacy by, ultimately creating custodians that are going to, uphold and hopefully even enhance that legacy that you're trying to build. And so that's that for us, whether, within the restaurants, that's always what we're aspiring to do, and what we're aspiring to build. And I think that's why we've been able to, successfully scale and grow, and keep the quality and keep the culture.
Well, let's talk about Table One, because when you had told me about it, it fascinates me. I've always been a fan of Isadore Sharp, and so that's Isadore. If you're out there and you're listening right now, we're going to have you on the podcast at some point. You're an absolute genius. But I likened what Table One was, and correct me if I'm wrong. I likened it to some of the concepts that he had done in bringing the culture and bringing that part. Can you explain what Table One is and how it came to be?
Sure. So, Table One Hospitality is a, restaurant. It's a restaurant group where we, develop restaurant concepts. We open and operate restaurants, and primarily we work within the hotel space. And our value proposition is that we are, um, enhancing the food and beverage operations for our hotel partners, while also being able to check a lot of the boxes that that they need for the overall asset or for their overall vision and brand. And you know, the kind of rewind about 24 years, we started, ultimately, I started a company called Mina Group with Chef Michael Mina, where we did that, and we really, wanted to follow the Isidore Sharp model that he built with the Four Seasons, where we were going to be a restaurant management company, and we wanted to work with best-in-class partners like Four Seasons and MGM Resorts and the Starwoods of the world. And so much that we would represent the headset and mindset of an independent restaurant, but be able to plug in nicely to the hotel, kind of system. And it's a very challenging world. Restaurants are tough. It's not a lot of people think it's a glamorous business. I mean, sure, it is glamorous, and we certainly get to live in the highlight reels of people's lives, and that's what moves us and inspires us. But it's a tough business to make money in, and it's a tough business to control because there are so many moving pieces. And so, we had a recipe and a formula at Mina Group that yielded high success and high results, and we followed that model, which is again very similar to kind of the Four Seasons model, but for a restaurant group. And then, a few years back, we decided to create a new company with Table One Hospitality, where we would emulate that model and utilize the same playbook that we established at Mina Group that yielded so much success. And then you have been growing that business over the past 3 years. So it's been a great, exciting time, and we've had a lot of growth and a lot of success, and looking forward to the next few years as well.
Well, you're very humble. I remember asking you at the Vibe Room because most of the time, this is what I love about you, Patric, too, is most of the time when someone asks stats, it's almost like you're letting the bull out of the cage with the person. They're waiting, like, ask me the stats. With you, it's the opposite. It's almost like, I remember at the Vibe Room when I asked you, like, how many restaurants, and you were like, and you kind of peeled back a little bit because you're not a big hat, no cattle guy. You're the guy that doesn't worry about the hat that you're wearing because you got all the cattle that you need, right? And so help me through this. Like, okay, so I'm a chef. I'm an aspiring chef. I'm that guy, right? But I just don't have the processes, because this happens a lot when a person's a master at their craft, right? So they're a phenomenal chef, but that doesn't mean that they're great with systems and how to run the front and the back and all the things, and to understand the P&Ls and the EBITDA and everything that goes into the restaurant itself, the marketing part. I'm that guy, right? I'm the master of his craft. I'm thinking in my heart, like, if I could just get exposure like some of these guys, I know my craft could speak for itself. How then do I plug into a Table One? And I'm not saying that anyone has the ability to do this. Are you guys choosing them, or are they choosing you?
I mean, it's a little bit of both. I think a lot of times we look at what the opportunities are that we have within the pipeline and within the different markets or the different cities that we're in, and we look for a particular type of talent, or sometimes people will reach out and or be connected and say, hey, I'm in Nashville and I really want to grow into these markets, and if you've got opportunities for me, please feel free to reach out. And so it's a little bit of both.
How do you look at it? How do you look at it, and what are some of the things that you look for that you would say, hey, there's a green light in this, maybe there's a yellow light I go through with caution, or there's a red light, like, we're good, continue on doing what you're doing, we're going to continue on doing what we're doing, but probably it wouldn't be a fit?
I think first and foremost, it's about value systems and making sure that from a cultural perspective, there's a connection and a connection point. We want people that we want to work with people that are going to be complementary to the team, not not kind of in conflict with the team. So that's what we look at first, and then second, it's certainly in terms of skill set, talent, and aptitude, and marketability, and so I think it's a combination of what they let's what people can bring to the table, what we can bring to the table, but then ultimately it's really about fit.
What's the difference between, say, like, you had introduced me to Chef Mina, to Michael Mina, and he was on the podcast, which I want to thank you for that. What's the difference between a Michael Mina, a Gordon Ramsay that people hear about, things like that, and the guy that has maybe a similar talent? It's almost like the NFL, right? So there's no one bad in the NFL, but there are the people who it just jumps to the other level. What are the components that make that happen and make restaurants go to that other level?
Yeah, I mean, Michael Mina is a generational talent. He's somebody that, at the very core of what he does is he understands humans and what they want, and how to give it to them at a very impressive level. And so that's core to core to who he is as a chef and really as a business person. But it doesn't just stop there. I mean, obviously he understands how to cook delicious and how to make delicious, but it's really about how to inspire others to be the best version of themselves. And he always does that. He's I talk a lot about being a thermostat, not a thermometer. He's a thermostat. When he changes the temperature of a room, and so he will instantly make butt cheeks pucker, and people want to be their best whenever, at any given time, and it's because he's always at his best, right? And so and that's the leadership side of things, but he's a great businessman as well. He's very generous. He's got an amazing heart. He's a very sincere and engaging person as well. So it's a lot of times, and so a lot of times, you don't, there's a movie that I love, Jerry Maguire. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tom Cruise, Cuba Gooding Jr. But if you look at Cuba Gooding Jr.'s role in the movie, he was a wide receiver. Rod Tidwell always wanted to get paid. Was no matter it was he wore his stats on his chest, and he wanted the paycheck, and he had a challenge because he didn't necessarily, the coaches didn't, he had the talent and he had the aptitude, but there's a certain part of the formula that he was mixing, whether the coaches or the players in the locker room and him were at odds, or he was truculent with the media, or those types of things. And so you always see that struggle for him through the movie, and it's until he has kind of this moment of humanity where he just puts it all on the line and really now is vulnerable to the situation, is then when everything starts to work out for him and he starts getting the accolades that he wants. And so I say that because a lot of times it's not just the talent and your ability to do things. There's a lot of kind of non-tangible elements that really get somebody have that extra special something. And I see, a lot of times there's very talented people in my industry that have, that aren't able to grow and have the type of success that Michael's had because they're missing some of those qualities.
Patric, you've always had an it factor. And I've known you for a long time, not as long as Jenny Kim. We'll do a shout out to her. But I mean, she's known you a lot longer, but I've known you for a long time. I mean, I believe you and I met in 1999. You had an it factor walking into a place, and you have a presence. There's a lot of people with talent, and then there's people with talent, and then that it part of it. Is it even possible to develop that? In your people as you grow, and how can you do it in such a creative industry as you have? Because when you are in a creative industry, a lot of times people don't like systems, processes, right? They want to free form, they want to do the stuff. How are you able to bring those things together, and can you create the it factor in people?
Well, I think, the it factor comes from dedication, hard work, and relentlessness, right? And that I think those things can always be worked on. The late great Kobe Bryant always talked about he wanted to be obviously he had a certain amount of talent, but he always wanted to be known as the hardest working guy in the room. And I think that that's what helps give you the it factor is being willing to do what no one else is willing to do. And
Oh, keep going,
go
keep
ahead.
going, keep going.
As it relates to systems, and I think, to me, systems allow for freedom. And if you've got systems in place, well, actually, let me take that back. If you don't have systems in place, what is in place? Well, chaos, right? Because there's not a standard for doing this. There's not a standard for doing that. So every day you're in this kind of in the thick of thin things, because you're trying to figure out how to build the plane, right? But you're not looking at the manual, right? But if you've got the manual, then you take out all of that frustrating nonsense and all the noise, and you can just follow along. But then it allows for creativity, right? And so if you've got your systems in place, and a way of doing things, and standards, then you don't have to be bogged down from all the noise, and your mind is allowed to now kind of roam free and receive all that great creativity, and that whether all that inspiration, for you to help grow and at your skill and at your craft.
So when you connect, when Table One sees a concept or a chef says like, hey, we want to invest in this because we see that there's an upside, the marketability, we see the integrity, all the things. What's the first actionable thing when you come in as Table One? What's the first, say, I'm that chef, Chef Kelly. That wouldn't be a good name for I would want to add something to it, make it a little spicy. You know what I mean? But if it's that, what's the first thing that a Table One comes in to be able to almost set the foundation for as we grow?
I think it's, the first thing is building the relationship. And, whether it be, over dinner, meetings, conversations, that's always the first thing, is building the relationship and talking about vision, and making sure that that there's been trust established, and that there's a kind of a like-mindedness established as well. And so, to me, that's kind of step one, is building the relationship, building the trust, and sharing the vision. And then once you can get that as your North Star, then it's really a matter of following a process to implement. But that's the first. That's first and foremost what needs to be established.
How do you look at, because you guys are all over the world? How many restaurants right now is Table One working with?
14.
14. Okay, and are they spread out in different areas?
Yes.
Okay, how spread out is this? Where are some of the places that they're at?
I mean, New York, Hawaii, San Francisco, Houston, Los Angeles.
So do you guys look at a map and say, okay, we want to be able to look in these places, or is it just depending on the opportunity that comes about?
I think it's more about, one, it's, because of the nature of our business, it's really more about the opportunity that comes about. Obviously, there's key markets that we always want to grow into. Okay. And are always excited to grow into, but it's really more so about, kind of the opportunities and the needs that are out there for us.
What are the areas? Like, how do you establish them? Is it just the larger cities that we know of? Say, like when I think of an LA, I do think of food. People argue this with me all the time, but I believe that I'm right in it, just like I am in my marriage all the time, Patrick. I believe the greatest food in the world is in Las Vegas. And the reason why I say this is because Las Vegas has the greatest of all the cities and countries all in one spot. Do you sign off on my theory, or where do you feel?
I think Las Vegas is the entertainment capital of the world. And I think if you're looking to entertain somebody, whether it be through a nightclub, dinner, show, concert, sporting event, Las Vegas will hands down outpunch anybody in its weight class or above its weight class, whatever. Las Vegas will deliver, whether it's a Super Bowl, it's a Taylor Swift concert, whatever it is, you're going to get. It's always going to be better in Vegas. In terms of dining and restaurants, there's certainly a collection of the world's greatest hits all in one city in Las Vegas, and you're always going to be blown away, always going to be amazed with that level of hospitality, that level of service. This is a hospitality town, and so you're always going to be, completely taken care of and blown away here. I will say, if you're looking to learn and get exposed to new ways of doing things, new restaurants, which I love, is to go out and learn and see what other people are doing. There are places in Vegas, that exists, but there are other cities in the world that I love to go to get exposed to different cuisines, different food, different ideas, different concepts. Whether it's Paris, Manhattan, Brooklyn, San Francisco, Los Angeles, because there's a different box that needs to be checked for those chefs. And here in Vegas, we're going to entertain you, and we're going to blow your minds, and we're going to blow you away. But at a smaller restaurant in the West Village in New York, there you might have a little bit more freedom to take a little bit more risk with what you're doing. And so to me, that's always very inspiring when you see people taking risk. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's always great to be able to witness and to be a part of and to be inspired by.
When you go into like the West Village in New York, and you have this, off the beaten path, incredible cuisine, a different kind of experience. It's not the over the top, like you were talking about Vegas wise. When you have that, and then how do you take that and bring it to the masses without it losing its heart? Because this is a part that you'll see a lot of times where a chef will be amazing or a restaurant will be amazing, and then it grows and you're like, it's not as amazing as it used to be. How can you keep that heart?
I think for us, we're always looking to, what happens in a restaurant is, one, we nourish, right, and we restore. And we get to do that through food, through drink, through community. But what we also do is we tell a story, and whether it's a story of the cuisine, if it's a story of the cocktail, a story of the ambiance. And we always really want to be able to, one, tell an authentic and soulful story with our community. And that's kind of the perspective that we have is, when, we do a Japanese izakaya, and we bring that to Hawaii, we want to share that. We want to share that story with the community. And that, I think, sincerity in that approach that allows, I think allows for the heart and soul to continue to exist. And then it's all about then building the culture and the team around that. And, and again, it's each and every single person has to be a custodian of that legacy, and they have to believe in that story and do all the work that helps to share that narrative and amplify it with the community.
How do you stay so personal with it? Because a lot of times when people, and I fell victim to this, I actually fell in love with the systems, and I managed people, and it bit me. And when I did it, I ended up losing people. I had a challenge. When I realized the paradigm shift of loving the people, managing the system, things moved in a different way. We had a conversation the other day where had a personal connection, although maybe you didn't grow up in it, but you had a personal connection. I think is it Izakaya you said was the one in, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay. It was at that restaurant where the community came together, and there was a very large ceremony around it that kind of blew you away, that couldn't, and we talked about it, possibly couldn't have happened in another city, but because of where it was culturally, it was completely connected. How do you stay that connected to each and every person and like individual restaurant when you're dealing with a lot, and it would be easier at times to just say, this is our systems, this is the way that we work, and we have to move forward with this thing?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said love the people and manage the systems. I think that's what's paramount here, is that, one, that you've got to have that approach and that philosophy, and that you're not going to be able to be if you're trying to grow an organization in scale excellence. You're not going to be able to do that on your own. The only way to do that is through people, and the only way to do that through people is to have a strong culture and a strong connection to the value system and the belief system that kind of is the motor for that business. And so, one, you've got to love the people, and two, you've got to have systems so you can love the people. Because if you don't have systems in place, then you're just again, you're back to managing chaos, and you're not able to love the people. So you've got to have very strong operating systems. They have to be entrenched in those systems that allows you then to love the people. But I'll tell you, what's important is you obviously you can't be everywhere all at once, and you can't if you have a business in Hawaii, and you have a business in Las Vegas, and you have a business in New York, you're not able to spend all of your time at one place. So what's important is that you've got to be able to find ways to connect while you're there that are deep and meaningful, and hopefully leave behind that imprint on the team, and leave behind some of that residue. And then you got to go back, and it's almost kind of like back. I'm gonna obviously I'm not this old, but I remember watching reruns with my grandfather of like the Ed Sullivan Show, and the guy would have the plates on the sticks, and he'd go and spin the plate, and then come over here and spin the plate, and come over here and spin the plate. And a lot of times you have to kind of do that for your connection with your team, as you've got to go back and respin the plate so everybody's staying engaged and connected. And that's but it's hard that you can't listen. It's hard to do that if every time you got to go, you got to fix systems, right? So you've got to make sure that the systems aren't going to just manage themselves. They've got to be monitored and managed on a daily basis. But then because you have systems in place, you can go back and spend your time and attention loving on your people.
So what we found throughout time was that our systems were a lot of times a list of our screw-ups. So a person would screw up, then we'd make a system so you wouldn't screw up again. And what we found is it just gave people kind of freedom in the stuff. And how do you know when a system needs to be adjusted, as opposed to where people are having a challenge with it and you saying, no, we kind of need to push through this thing? Because there are systems, like I would like there to be a system for my son to wake up every morning and run around the block and then do the dishes and feed the dog and walk the dog. Now, he seems to think that system isn't right for him. How do you know when to adjust a system or to be able to push a person to another level?
Well, I think it's important to not get caught up in the system, but really get caught up in the result. And so with the example, let's say the example of your son. what's the goal? What's the desired result? Is the desired result for him to have discipline, to be self-starting? So maybe flip the script and say, hey, here's what I'm looking to see from you, and this is how it manifests. It manifests because you wake up, your bed's made, this and that, you're exercising. Why don't you propose a system that achieves that, right?
Wow.
And let's now he's an author of that system, and so naturally, as humans, we're going to want to support what we create, and we're going to be, big proponents of that being successful. And so, same, in a restaurant, sometimes if we're having a challenge with people adopting to a system or whatnot, we'll meet and say, okay, what do you propose? Here's the goal. What is there a better way that for this specific set of circumstances or this specific team to attain this goal or this result consistently, and how would you evolve and change it, or what system would you put in place to do so? And then you know that's naturally how a lot of different systems adjust and evolve, and it's because of that. You can't do that every time. There's a lot of stuff that you've already tried it 18 ways to Christmas for the past 20 years, and you know what you know. But there's a lot of times that you can do that in order to get buy-in and get support and to ultimately get the result that you're looking for. But I'll tell you, it's funny you say that about your son, because we've been in the same experience. Maybe 7 months ago with our son, just wanting him to get to show some young man and starting to go from boy to young man. And he's made some amazing steps in the right direction with growth. And he started playing football this year for his middle school, and it's tackle football. And his coaches are amazing, old school guys. And the practices are at 6 o'clock in the morning before school. So that means the night before, he's got to get his bag ready with one, his football gear, two, his clothes for school, three, his lunch, his water. There's a lot of preparation that has to be done, and he's got to do it. It's not for his mom to do. It's not for me to do. It's for him to do. He's got to do it. That means then he's got to wake up at 5:20, and his bed has to be made. All right. So he wakes up on his own at 5:20. I wake up at I wake up early. And then I drop him off. He goes to practice from 6 to 7:30, and then goes and showers, gets ready for school, has a little snack that he has in his bag, and then goes to class the rest of the day. And what that's taught, obviously, he had the desire to want to play football, and he's been bit, right? A lot of kids that's tough. That's a lot to do, to coordinate all that, schlep all your pads to school, then have to run, put your pads away, make sure the locker room's clean, because one time they left the locker room a mess and the coach made him run ladders all practice. So make sure the locker room's clean, shower, get ready for school, put on your deodorant. As a 12-year-old, these are things that you didn't expect to be assigned, but he got assigned them. And it's helped him grow as a young man, and the responsibility muscles that he's built, and the ownership muscles that he's built, and the confidence muscles now that we've seen from him have not just manifested with like waking up to the now he's with schoolwork. He's on top of it because he's got grade check with his coach, and he doesn't want to get benched, so he's got to make sure his grades are up. But two, he's started building these discipline muscles that came from football practice and that schedule, but it's now manifesting in other areas of his life. And it's been amazing to see the growth over the past 6 months, and I've been really impressed by it. But I just wanted to share that story because because obviously I know Maddox is aiming to be the next Patrick Mahomes, and so I look forward to the schedule and the system that he's going to put into place to get there.
I'm gonna ask my buddy Rick Burkholder if Patty is sleeping in a lot and playing a lot of YouTube and Fortnite right now. Maybe he is now because he's the $1 billion man. But tell me this real quick too. The dark side of leadership, a lot of people don't talk about, and Tim Grover talks about it in both of his books. And you alluded to Kobe Bryant, and he talked about that. He was Kobe Bryant's trainer, and he was Michael Jordan's trainer, and he said that there's this dark side to leadership, as far as like that not everybody's going to like you, that you're going to go through these things. Do you subscribe to that part? Does there have to be a dark side to be able to accomplish elite results? Because you are a Kobe Bryant, a Michael Jordan in your industry. Does that have to exist?
I think if you think that there's not winter and there's not dark and there's not night, you're fooling yourself. There's always going to be a dark side of things. There's always going to be tough decisions. There's, the saying is heavy weighs the crown. And when you're in a leadership position, actually there's a great, I don't know if you ever watched Sopranos, but there's a great scene in Sopranos when Tony's, he's been probably going a little hog wild, and one of his capos comes up and is like, what's going on with you? You're going off the rails. And he says, listen, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to have the responsibility of you and your family and him and his family and everybody's well-being, everybody's liveliness, our livelihood, everybody's life in your hands. And he said, and sometimes it weighs on me, and that's definitely a dark side of leadership. Sometimes there's a lot of responsibility as a leader that you have for the welfare of people that are in your charge, and whether it's their livelihood and and how they're able to take care of their family, but two, their growth and their development and what they're exposed to, and three, how are they doing physically, how are they doing mentally, and the list goes on. And that's a great responsibility, and sometimes that can weigh heavy, and sometimes that's empowering, right? And you've got to just know, sometimes it's winter and sometimes it's summer, and you just need to be the buffalo and push through it and not be an ostrich, right, where you stick your head in the ground and just hope that everything's okay, the next day. And so there's that element of the dark side, but there's also, I think, what Tim Grover and Kobe refer to is sometimes you've got to, call upon, a different element. And, Kobe Bryant had the persona of the Black Mamba, right? And where, before, off the court, he's, father, friend, this and that, da, da, da. But as soon as he steps on the court, he changed his persona to become the Black Mamba. And what does a Black Mamba do? It kills, right? And so he had to create that character because that wasn't who he was, but that's who he needed to be at the level that he wanted to be. Yeah. And I think, Tony Robbins, he does what before he goes on stage and stuff like that. He has a character shift, and you'll see him bouncing on his rebounder to get all the endorphins pumping, and he snaps into place. And actually, when we were recording the intro, I saw you kind of I don't know if you know this or not, but you kind of did something. It was almost just a small little physical thing where you shifted and you became, you're pretty. I mean, you're always kind of Kelly Cardenas superstar, but you kind of you had this shift and boom, you were on. And I don't know if you know this or not, but you do that. But I think you've got to, as a leader too, whenever I'm gonna, speak in front of a group, or whenever I'm going to, into a meeting, or whenever I'm walking into a restaurant, I also, you know, I don't want to be the black mama because I don't want to kill people, but I want to be, I want to be the Kobe Bryant, right? And be the best I can be, and I want to be locked in, and I want people to, I want to inspire people, and I want to be that thermostat. And so, there's a lot of different things that I do to get there. Sometimes, before a meeting, I'll practice. There's the Gandhi method, where Gandhi, when he would go into a negotiation, he would picture, he would meditate, and he would picture himself and how what topics he discussed, and he would kind of go through that, who Gandhi was at the meeting. Then he would flip it and say, and put himself in the shoes of the person on the other side of the table, and he would see how they were receiving the message and how they might, respond to the message, and he would walk through that in his meditative state. Then he would go above the meeting and watch both characters take place, Gandhi and the person across the table, and he would watch it, and that would help him as he would prepare for a meeting or a negotiation. And so I like to do that a lot. I practice that, when I'm going into big meetings or presentations, and to just help get myself in that kind of ready state. But I think that there's a lot, there's a lot of different tools and tricks that we've got, as leaders, you've got to kind of tap into in order to activate that persona.
So, Patric, I respect your time. And so I have one last question for you. You know why I started the podcast, because those two amazing people, Maddox and McKenna, my two kids, and I didn't want them to worship idols. Although my son, I think, worships you now because of our last experience at Strip Steak, and he had the cowboy ribeye. It had the crust on it. He's watching YouTube, so he's watching all these things. He's testing it. He's like, this is a perfect medium, Dad, like the whole nine. But I never wanted him to worship idols. I wanted him to be inspired by iconic people like yourself. And you show it every single time you're on the podcast. It's unbelievable. And when you were at the Vibe Room Live, it was like everyone loved you. What advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could call yourself Uncle Patrick, it would be awesome.
Well, Maddox and McKenna, Uncle Patrick has this for you. I think that you have an amazing and incredible opportunity, and an amazing and incredible power to do and be whatever it is that you want to be. It's really a decision that you have to make, is if you want to do that and be that, right? And so, whether it's, I know a little bit more about Maddox. I know some about McKenna, but I know that Maddox is, playing flag football right now, and he's a quarterback, and he wants to continue to, to grow in that direction. Maybe, aspiring to be a Division I athlete is in the cards for Maddox. But it's you have the power to do that. But it's really a matter of, then, do you want to do that, and then making the decision to do that on a daily basis. And it's, I talk to my kids about this, and Maddox and McKenna, as uncle, I'm going to talk to you about this as well, is every day you're making a deposit. Every day you're making a deposit. You're either making a deposit into the bucket of what you want for your life and what you want to be for your life, or you're not. And if you're not making the deposit into that bucket, you're making a deposit into the wrong bucket, which is what you don't want to be in life, and and what you don't aspire for yourself. And so it's no deposit is a deposit in the wrong bucket, just so you know. So every day you are either making a deposit in the right bucket or a deposit in the wrong bucket. It's up to you to decide. It's up to you to decide which bucket you're depositing in on a daily basis. And slowly, after time, you're going to have enough deposits in one of those buckets, and and hopefully it's the right bucket, because then that will lead to you fulfilling the vision that you have for yourself. So hopefully that inspires Maddox and McKenna, and hopefully those are some sage words from wise old Uncle Patrick here.
Well, Patrick, I know you got meetings, you got stuff to do. So many things that I took away from today. I just want to tell you a couple of them. If you foster, establish, and protect, that was a thing that you talked about. You talked about creating great memories that are linked to the things, the ultimate results that you want to have. Dedication, hard work, and relentlessness creates an it. And that systems allow for freedom. You either have systems or chaos. You nourish, restore, and tell a story in every single bit. And that is a brand, like any brand out there. If you nourish, restore, and you tell a story, your brand level will go to a completely other level. Patrick, you've been amazing. Like always, man. I love you. Go do your meetings. You're officially off the hot seat, my brother.
All right.
Have a great day, bro.
All right, man. You too.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
So that was my time with one of my great friends. His name is Patric Yumul. You can check him on Table One. It's incredible to be able to see what we were talking about in Proverbs 31 today too, which I think is incredible. It talked about confidence, value, hard work, perseverance, intelligence, ingenuity, wisdom, prudence, honor, and then compliment on the beauty. And when I look at this, it connected me with Patrick because I could tell him about all the amazing things that he's done for me, or all the incredible introductions that he's had, or all these things. I could tell him that first, or I can compliment him on his confidence, his value, his hard work, his perseverance, his intelligence, his ingenuity, his wisdom, his prudence, his honor, and then bring that in. And if we can have that type of pattern, it's unbelievable. I'll have the link in the bio for Table One and the restaurants. There's 14 of them throughout the world that you can go and experience. And what I would tell you, if you're ever going to dinner, there's going to dinner. There's having food. There's having good food and great food. And then there's the Table One experience. And the Table One experience is on a completely different level because of what you just experienced right here. You just experienced it, the head, the CEO of Table One, and you hear him. You hear him talk about how he's able to, put systems in place to create freedom so there's not chaos, that you deposit into what you want. And if you don't deposit into that, you're depositing into the other side. Absolutely mind-blowing. I have the greatest friends in the world. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Vibe. I want to make sure that you subscribe, you comment, you share it with your friends. Do that all. I love you guys. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over again.